What if the most dangerous weapon in the Middle East right now isn't a bomb, a missile, or a drone, but a single photograph posted online? A picture of a ship, a Marine Expeditionary Unit, floating in the Persian Gulf. Before we dive into what this actually means, hit that like button if you want to understand the real chess game unfolding here. Subscribe so you don't miss the next move, and share this with someone who thinks they already know how this ends, because they probably don't. Here's the thing about the Islamic Republic of Iran. They have spent 40 years building a system of survival based on bluff, delay, and deception. They talk, they threaten, they negotiate, they walk away. Then they talk again. It is a rhythm so predictable that most analysts have learned to just wait for the next round. But something changed. And the change is not in Tehran. The change is sitting offshore, 20 miles from the most important piece of Iranian real estate that almost nobody talks about. We need to go back to the beginning of this story. Not the beginning of the conflict, but the beginning of the moment. A few weeks ago, Iranian forces attacked 2 commercial ships near the Strait of Hormuz. That is not new. They have been doing this for months. What is new is how Washington responded. Not with a warning, not with sanctions, not with a strongly worded statement. 10 confirmed strikes on Iranian military targets. 2 of those targets were brand new facilities the IRGC had just built to make shipping even more dangerous. They were still under construction when they were destroyed. Think about that for a second. Iran built something. The United States knew exactly where it was before it was finished, and they hid it before it could ever be used. That is not routine. That is a signal. And the signal says, we can see everything you build, and we will take it before you ever touch it. But the signal did not come in the form of a press conference or a diplomatic note. It came in the form of a picture posted by CENTCOM, the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, locked, loaded, and parked in the Persian Gulf. A self-contained fighting force of about 2,200 Marines and sailors. No airfield needed, no permission from any country, no supply lines to establish, no warning required. This unit can launch F-35B stealth fighters from a ship deck, put armored vehicles on a beach, and insert special operators into the water all in the same afternoon. And it is sitting right next to the single most vulnerable point in the entire Iranian economy. So what is the deal with Iran? Why are they refusing to show up to their own meetings? The Iranian foreign minister said talks in Doha were unconfirmed. The American president announced them from the Oval Office. One of these 2 things is true. Either the meeting was never actually agreed to by Iran, and the United States overstated the situation, or Iran is publicly denying it while secretly using back channels to negotiate. Both of these possibilities exist at the same time, and the only way to figure out which one is real is to look at what is happening on the ground, on the water, and on the balance sheet. Iran wants $6 billion in frozen assets released. That is not a negotiating position. That is a number that represents survival. Their oil exports have been choked, their tankers are being seized, their ports have been hit, their rail lines have been cut, their power plants are degraded. Their economy is absorbing damage on every front. $6 billion is the cash they need to stop the bleeding. Not to win, not to expand, to keep the lights on, to keep the military paid, to keep the subsidies flowing to a population that is already tired of a regime that promised them prosperity and gave them isolation. But here's the problem for Tehran. The United States is not just squeezing one artery, they are squeezing all of them at the same time. And the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit is the physical representation of that strategy. Let us talk about the unit itself, because most of the coverage does not actually explain what it can do. A Marine Expeditionary Unit is not a scaled-down version of a larger force. It is a purpose-built instrument designed to fight in exactly the kind of environment the Persian Gulf represents. It has a ground combat element, a reinforced infantry battalion that can take and hold terrain. It has an aviation combat element, F-35Bs that can take off and land vertically from an amphibious assault ship. That means they do not need a runway. They do not need an airbase. They can fly from a ship that is also carrying landing craft and hovercraft and armored vehicles. The same ship that launches stealth fighters can launch a beach invasion in the same hour. It has a logistics combat element that can sustain the entire force for 2 weeks without any outside supply. 2 weeks. In a contested environment where supply lines are the most vulnerable part of any operation. A force that brings its own sustainment for 14 days is a force that can act with speed and surprise that other units cannot match. And it has a command element that integrates all of these pieces with the broader joint force. F-15s, F-16s, naval strike packages, all coordinated from a single node that sits on the water. Now ignore all of that for a second, because there is one part of the MEU that is more important than all the others. And it is the part that almost nobody talks about. Marine Force Reconnaissance. Specifically, the Maritime Raid Force. These are not normal infantry. They go first, quietly, days or weeks before any visible operation. They swim into objective areas. They fast rope into them. They use small drones that can launch from the water and feed live video back to the command ship before anyone on the beach knows they're there. Their entire job is to find the cracks in the enemy's defenses, and then widen them until the main force can pour through. Force Recon is trained to seize oil platforms, to board ships, to take islands, to strike radar installations and port facilities. Every single one of these capabilities maps directly onto the geography of the Persian Gulf. And specifically, it maps onto one small piece of land that Iran cannot afford to lose: Kharg Island. If you have never heard of Kharg Island, do not feel bad. Most people have not. But it is the most important piece of Iranian territory that is not a nuclear facility or a military base. It is an oil export terminal. About 90% of Iran's oil leaves the country through Kharg Island. 90%. That is not a vulnerability. That is the definition of a single point of failure. If Kharg Island goes offline, Iran does not lose some of its oil revenue. It loses almost all of it. The government stops being able to pay its bills. The military stops being able to buy equipment. The social programs that keep the population from revolting stop being funded. The entire system that the Islamic Republic has built over 40 years collapses. And the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit is sitting 16 miles away. Do you see now why the picture matters? It is not a coincidence. It is not a routine deployment. It is a message carved into the geography of the region. We have the ability to take away everything you need, and we are close enough to do it before you can stop us. Iran has fortified Kharg Island. Of course they have. There are surface-to-air missile positions, radar towers, communications infrastructure, fast attack craft docked at naval facilities that sit right next to the oil loading equipment. But here is the thing about that fortification. It was built to defend against a specific kind of threat: air raids, missile strikes, maybe a naval bombardment. It was not built to defend against a Marine Expeditionary Unit that can land F-35Bs on a ship deck. Send Force Recon operators into the water with small drones and put armored vehicles on the beach while simultaneously suppressing every site. The F-35B is not just a stealth fighter. It is a tool designed to operate against exactly the kind of point defense systems that Iran has installed on Kharg Island. The radar towers are exactly the kind of target that has been systematically struck across Iran. The sequence is simple: suppress the air defenses, destroy the radar and communications, then strike the operational assets. It has worked everywhere else. There is no reason to believe it would not work here. And beyond Kharg Island, the MEU has another target in its sights: Bandar Abbas, Iran's primary Gulf port and the home of the IRGC Navy's main operational fleet. Satellite imagery shows hovercraft bases, helicopter facilities, SAM sites, underground bunkers, and the fast attack boats. A Marine Expeditionary Unit that can land amphibiously, that has Force Recon swimming ahead of any visible operation, that brings its own logistics, and that operates F-35Bs from a ship deck offers a completely different set of options against Bandar Abbas than precision strikes. Whether those options are exercised depends on decisions made far away from the Persian Gulf, but the capability is there, staged and ready. Now, let us talk about the intelligence success that most people have missed. The two newly constructed Iranian military sites were struck. They were identified and destroyed before they became operationally functional. Iran built two sites specifically to harass commercial shipping. American intelligence found them both while the concrete was still wet. This is not routine surveillance. This is a surveillance architecture of a kind that Iran has no effective counter to. Persistent, comprehensive coverage of the Iranian coastline that operates faster than Iran can build and conceal new military infrastructure. The significance of this, for any assessment of future Iranian attempts to rebuild, is direct. Iran cannot build its way back to operational capability faster than American intelligence can find and target what it is building. The two new sites were identified, targeted, and destroyed before a single IRGC drone ever launched from them. Whatever Iran builds next on the coastline faces the same intelligence coverage from the moment construction begins. Hit that like button if you're starting to see the full picture. Subscribe to stay ahead of the story, and share this with someone who thinks this is just another round of the same old game. The IRGC's command structure in the Strait has been degraded in a way that compounds all of the physical damage from the strikes. Reports indicate that Iranian Naval Commander Tenggiri, the officer most directly responsible for enforcing the Strait Closure Doctrine, was removed. This is not just one position being vacated. Military doctrines for operations as complex as enforced maritime closure are not simply inherited. They exist in institutional knowledge, in personal relationships between the commander and subordinate unit leaders, in established procedures for coordination between naval elements, missile batteries, drone controllers, and fast attack boat crews. Tenggiri built the Strait Closure playbook. He knew which officers could be trusted with which missions, which coordination channels worked under operational pressure, which contingencies the playbook had been stress-tested against. Remove the architect, and the playbook becomes a document, not a living operational system. The IRGC's Strait Control Doctrine is currently running without its main designer. And it is doing so in an environment where every operational capability that doctrine depended on has been simultaneously degraded by an air and naval campaign that Tanguy himself is no longer present to manage the response to. There's another capability that the MEU brings that deserves its own attention: intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. ISR. MQ-9. Reaper drones can be operated from amphibious assault ships. Small drones providing real-time video feeds can be launched from vessels that is simultaneously preparing F-35B strike sorties. The result is a floating ISR platform positioned in the operational theater that does not depend on land-based airfields for its surveillance coverage of the coastline. Every new IRGC construction project on the Iranian coast, every repositioning of fast attack boats between island hiding spots, every mobile radar activation in the coastal defense belt can be observed in near real time by surveillance assets operated from ships that are already positioned to act on that intelligence within the same operational window. The surveillance and the strike capability are not separated by the logistical distance between an intelligence platform and a strike platform. They are on the same ship. This integration is what makes the MEU's presence fundamentally different from adding more aircraft. A carrier air wing with extensive strike capability, but whose ISR assets are managed through a separate chain, can experience the lag between intelligence collection and strike execution that gives mobile targets time to move. The MEU's organic ISR, connected directly to its organic strike capability, compresses that lag to a level where boats have less time. This is the unglamorous side of what the 31st MEU contributes to the campaign, not the visible headline of Marines landing on a beach, but the invisible persistence of surveillance coverage that the entire targeting chain depends on to execute with precision. That has characterized the campaign's record of striking newly built Iranian sites before their concrete cures. Now, Iran is not without remaining capability. One-way attack drones remain available in significant numbers. The drone campaign against Kuwait alone demonstrates the volume Iran has been willing to expend on Gulf state targets. And the drone inventory is the most replenishable element of Iranian strike capability precisely because it can be manufactured domestically, from components that are more readily sourced than the electronics required for ballistic missiles or propulsion systems for fast boats. Fast attack boats, while reduced in number by confirmed strikes, retain the ability to operate from island concealment and emerge for harassment operations against commercial shipping. Their small signature and speed make them difficult to eliminate. Anti-ship missiles, including the C-802 Noor variant with its 100 nautical mile range, provide a reach that is not fully negated. Mobile launcher variants remain in the Iranian inventory and can be repositioned between strikes, and mines remain a passive threat. Mines do not depend on functioning command and control, active radar coverage, or any human decision-making at the moment of detonation. What changes in the presence of the 31st MEU is not that these capabilities stop being real. They remain real. What changes is the option space that Iran can consider without facing an immediate response capability that requires no preparation time. An IRGC unit that plants mines in the strait has to consider the possibility that Force Recon operators have been observing them. A fast attack boat crew concealing a vessel has to consider whether small drones from an amphibious ship are already tracking them. And an IRGC commander who orders a drone launch has to consider that F-35Bs are on the flight deck of the USS Tripoli, ready to execute a strike response that does not require any additional staging or preparation. The MEU's presence compresses the timeline for Iranian response options, not by eliminating those options, but by removing prep time. There is also a forward positioning option that has been discussed in strategic circles around the current campaign. Deploying elements of the MEU to the Omani side of the strait approaches, building a persistent presence on Omani territory. This would put marine hardware, drones, and quick reaction forces close enough to the strait entrance to respond within hours. Oman has maintained a historically complex but functional relationship with Iran, while also hosting American military access. An MEU presence on the Omani side would be a forward deployment that avoids the legal complications of Iranian territorial proximity, while achieving the operational effect of persistent coverage over the strait's eastern approaches. Strategic logic is sound, and the geographic positioning makes it operationally feasible within the MEU's current theater presence. Here is what the 31st MEU's positioning communicates to the Iranian leadership, calculating whether to negotiate or continue fighting. It is not simply that the United States has additional military capability available. It is that it is staged against one asset. The $6 billion in frozen assets represents the liquid cash Iran needs immediately. Kharg Island represents the oil revenue. The Marine Expeditionary Unit is positioned to threaten both the liquid asset and the productive asset simultaneously. The immediate cash need through diplomatic leverage and the revenue stream through the direct military threat to the facility. That convergence of financial pressure and military positioning represents a compounding of adverse conditions Iran has not faced. Prior iterations of American pressure applied pressure across one or two of these dimensions at a time, giving Iran flexibility. The current campaign is applying pressure across all of them simultaneously, which is why the Doha meeting confusion matters analytically. An Iranian government with operational flexibility does not fail to confirm its own diplomatic meetings. It manages its public communications, sends its delegation, and uses the diplomatic channel to extract concessions while resisting. An Iranian government that cannot confirm whether it is attending its own meeting is under multidimensional strain. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit did not arrive in the Persian Gulf for a diplomatic show. It arrived for operational readiness. The distinction between the two is the distance between theater and capability, and that distinction has never been narrower. With Kharg Island 16 miles from where the USS Tripoli is operating, Force Recon operators can be in the water at any time. F-35Bs can be airborne and over Iranian targets before the IRGC radar operators have functioning systems to look with. Iran's leadership is doing the same calculus. That is the point. Not to execute the operation, but to make it unfavorable. Washington is betting with Marines. The mullahs are running the numbers. And the meeting in Doha is the diplomatic space between them. Whatever happens next is being decided right there. If you made it this far, you understand the game better than most. Now press that like button one more time. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this with someone who needs to see the board. Not just the pieces, but the moves that haven't been made yet, because the next move is coming, and both sides know it.